start. All right. Dear Jesus, thank you for blessing me as I give this talk and my mind as I speak, and everybody here listening as they receive. And thank you for the chance to celebrate this amazing feast and enjoy your presence in a special way during this time, and just to feel all of the victories and breakthroughs that you're going to bring in the wonderful weather here in Florida. Thank you so much. Amen.
Amen.
All right. What we're going to be talking about today is the subject that was going to be in talk 2, but subject 1 seemed to need more detail. So now we have that set up. This will be about the heart and the picker. This is something that Dr. Ian McGilchrist talks about quite a bit. We'll just focus on right hemisphere and left hemisphere. The right hemisphere thinks from big picture to detail. The left hemisphere thinks from detail to big picture. Most of your intelligence, IQ, is in the right brain. Most of what is known about these two brains by Dr. Ian McGilchrist has been proved to be wrong. But Dr. Jim Wilder agrees with this also. What this means is that to be emotionally damaged is to have your IQ lowered, sometimes by a factor of 99.9%. So as I've had emotional healing, I became a lot smarter too. When I had my little trauma there in Tennessee, it felt like my functional IQ dropped, which felt terrible, Maybe I focus on my intelligence too much. But the solution is when you get emotional healing and get back to joy, your brain comes back. This is what my dad and I talk about quite a bit. So, as I've gotten emotional healing, yesterday I was able to feel joy again. It felt like my dopamine receptors were knocked out for a few days. But today I feel pretty much back to normal again. But again, we don't go by our feelings either. So, this processes from big picture to detail. And this processes from detail to big picture. And the reason this is important is because it affects how you study scripture also. So detail to big picture is you find like 10 verses with little points, and then you string them together to form a picture like this. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots, and you link the dots to form a picture. That's left hemispheric. Right hemispheric is big picture to detail, where you have a whole story, and then in the story you see more details, and it just keeps filling in. The default way for the brain to think is in a story-based format. There was a wise lady who I think had been through the Holocaust who said, story-based cultures are hard to deceive. Logic-based cultures are easy to deceive because you have these logical steps, and if you knock out one of the steps, it breaks the loop and everything falls apart. But over here you have the whole story. You remove a detail, the story is still there. In fact, you can infer from these details back to the missing point. So this definitely is preferable. It's why there's so many stories in the Bible. Joseph went through these experiences, and you look at your life and see, if I had a time like Joseph, like had a sexual temptation, and he runs away without his overcoat because he's so anxious to escape this lady. And so when he escapes the lady, he realizes after he made the action, I left my coat behind. And so because of this, it could look bad, but he wasn't thinking about that at the time. That was a right brain action at the right prefrontal cortex level. That's level 4. And so when you have a experience that triggers this, you act very quickly. Like you get a phone call from a telemarketer and you may just hang up because you have no time for them. Or like a friend of mine who studies Hebrew, he will simply start speaking to them in Hebrew, reciting the Hebrew Bible. and the law is they can't hang up on you. So after 20 minutes, they're just begging him to stop. That's how he handles it. They never call back. So because of this, you have a...
They hang up on me, I whistle and there's nobody there. If it's a real person, they'll say, Mr. Garvey.
Yes, yes.
But if it's a tone, I make some kind of noise and then they...
Yeah. Yeah, you could always do that too. Are you real or are you just AI? That's appropriate in this day and age. So, this is how these two ways of thinking work. Now think about education, big picture to detail. You can teach subjects very simply. Like, see, here's a curve, and you can just say, well, the area under the curve is integral calculus, and the angle of the curve right here is differential calculus, and we'll just call this like this. And the form of this function has a certain limit, and that's what limits are. I just saw a YouTube video on this. You can dig deeper and deeper, but once you get the big picture, it's like, okay, this is the area, the slope can be here, the slope can be there. The limit on this, it only goes to 75, and at 76 it fails, So it's pretty simple, This is how to teach in school. Give me the big picture, and then go into all the details. And that way, when I want to learn something, it's like this picture I just drew. This applies to so many things. Here's the container, and then I just fill in more details inside. But if I am given all these points, random points for weeks and months in school, and no one tells me about the thing that collects them all, then I'm stuck in the left brain and I feel dumb. So this is the way to teach every subject. It's the way to teach brain science. It's the way to teach
So
how to study the Bible.
You're saying that people after that probably can't figure out what's going on because they've had too much detail over a long period of time.
Exactly. Yeah, to give the details first is to teach backwards.
That's
Because
called
this part of the
algebra
brain...
teacher.
It's
Say
called
again?
what?
The algebra teacher.
Oh.
Doesn't make sense, it goes to the left.
Yeah, see, this part of the brain is less intelligent, and our educational system is designed for people to use this part of the brain more, and this part of the brain less.
Really?
Yeah, this part of the brain is more immature and reactive and more prone to anger. That's part of why we have young people today who are overreacting to small things. Because the educational system is making them use the part of their
Right,
brain
exactly.
that's less mature.
Yeah.
If you teach the big picture first, they'll actually be calmer and more intelligent, I recognize a homeschooled child because they're just brilliant, it's just obvious.
Yeah, they're much smaller.
Because you're using the big picture. I was in regular school for years because my parents had to work, but by as an adult choosing to think this way, I have all the benefits of being homeschooled, even though in elementary school and high school I was mostly in regular school. So you can recover everything in adulthood, which is a great blessing because everybody in this room has some water under the bridge and is thinking, how do I get back to square one when I'm now at square 5 wishing I wasn't, When you can get back, absolutely. So do not despair at all. So this is important because it also applies to society. You see, when you have a society that goes big picture to detail, you have this founding document in our country called the Constitution, which has the big picture of who we are as Americans, and then the details from that are, how do I act today? How do I help my country? But if you just have the details, these random points in history is taught backwards too. This happened, and there was the Civil War, we had these presidents, no one knows what the country is for, and now our youth are choosing communism because they don't know what is such a problem with it. All you have to do is watch one YouTube video on North Korea, and your appetite for communism will disappear like that. So this is the reason we need a big picture, so we know what our country stands for and how to preserve things. Freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, different religions and people of different ethnic groups together in peace. In the Middle East, the different ethnic groups fight. In Northern Ireland, the different religious groups fight. And this is the problem. So we need a big picture to see what our country is even for. So looking back here to this concept of the heart and the picker, I'll be talking about a function of the left hemisphere that is inappropriate. This is put by God into its place if it stays in its lane. The book by Dr. Ian McGilchrist is called The Master and His Emissary. This is the master. The right brain is where you connect to people. It's where you're creative, which is why when you have a good time with people who you like, your creativity goes up. When you feel alone and isolated, your creativity goes down. But it may take creativity to figure how to escape your situation, which is why the homeless are stuck where they are. So if I will connect to them, be their friend, I can increase their creativity, at which point they'll be able to actually escape their situation and do something else. So this is the way to teach every subject, and it works much more simply. And I'm going to use this, I think, tomorrow when I go into the Gospel in Romans, because now you know what part of your brain.
She's saying that tomorrow we go to Keaton Beach.
Yeah. So
Oh, I meant Thursday, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and I think I'll speak about the Gospel in Romans, because that is very important, and you will see the two different ways to think about it using the two sides of the brain. So, when you're thinking this way, you're creative, you're more joyful. When someone disagrees with you, you'll think to yourself, if you're right brain dominant, you may have a point. These two things can both be true. The right brain sees that things that appear to be opposites actually can both be true at the same time. If you're more left hemispheric dominant, you're going to think these two things are different, therefore they can't both be true. Well, think about it like, how can a person be both a mother and a wife at the same time,
Yeah.
But in relationships, we see it's obvious. If you have a person who is left hemispheric dominant, it'll be harder for them to maintain connections because everybody has to fit into a box, and if a person doesn't fit in this box,
There you go.
if they do an action over here, then they can't understand it. But in the right brain, you have a big movable picture. It's like a wave, and the person does an action here. It's like, well, the wave is an approximation, everything is fine, and let's keep on going. So you eventually end up down here, and now the action matches more closely, but you can get the big picture of who the person is. This part of the brain can't understand people, actually. It can't actually connect to anybody, which is why I have a problem with AI, because it will be training people that intellectual left brain thinking is more important than right brain thinking. So the more time people spend dealing with AI, they will start to lose their desire and capacity for relationships. That's my concern about the future. Young people will have AI boyfriends and girlfriends, but they will be bonding to a computer that's just a machine, doesn't actually care about them. So this is the left hemispheric function that is not good. We're going to call it the picker. And this ruined my life. I'll give you examples of this. The picker. It is a function of the left brain that's not right. The correct function of the left brain is, okay, I see the chalk is on this side, activate right hand to pick it up. The computer's over here, use left hand for the computer, right hand for the chalk, so my two hands stay separate and the computer stays clean of chalk. Or a simple math equation, like x squared minus 5 equals 11, and so we add 5 in, we get 16, and then the square root of 16 is 4, done. But this is the left brain, but it's actually logic that shows up here in the right brain too. Logic, which is why if you have emotional damage, you cannot think as clearly, Like with this, when I was in high school, I couldn't do this fast because I was emotionally unhappy. Now math for me is like music, If I switch to base 15, I can do it just about as fast because I like math. I seem to have a gift for math also. But here's the thing with the picker. The picker is, my spouse said something offensive to me, so I just will never bring up the subject again. And then logically, they won't be upset at me again. Now that temporarily fixes it, but the long-term problem is, now there's a part of you that you're not sharing. And if your spouse has a reaction over here, this happened to my parents, I'll avoid this area because there was a reaction here. Well, now there's a reaction here, so I avoid this area. So I avoid this landmine, and after 15 years, you have landmines almost everywhere, and the communication is gone.
That's right. Yeah.
The important thing is to keep being yourself, to say, honey, what's the problem? Let's discuss this. And then you take care of these reactions, and then you actually have your full heart still working. So that's what the picker is, a short-term solution to say, if I make this choice, the pain is going to stop. You know, it's useful when I'm in the road and there's a car coming, get out of the road, but it doesn't mean I never go on the road again. It just means I have to watch for the cars that are coming. It doesn't mean I can't discuss the subject. It just means maybe not 5 minutes after they get back from work and they're dead exhausted, you know. So when you're using your picker, it's where you're thinking, well, I'm going to change from a relational way of thinking to more of a logical way. And this almost ruined my life. I thought, well, I understand the Bible very well. I understand theology pretty well. And my parents disagree with me, therefore they're lost and I'm saved, therefore I have to disown them because there would be a bad influence on me. That's using the picker, and then I lost the connection. I was 22 at the time, and I broke all my relationships because I was afraid that people would lead me astray. I thought, I am saved by the right ideas about God, but you're actually saved by having a relationship with God. And children will be saved at the end. There'll be children who will be alive, in that text that talks about, and those of us which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with those that have passed away to meet the Lord in the air. Well, the children don't have their brains fully developed. How can they get through that tough time without all the right theology? Well, they have to have a relationship with Jesus. They have to have a sense of connection to their parents, which then fuels their connection to God. So that is how this works in the most successful way.
Can I ask you something?
Yes, yes.
Now maybe I'm misunderstanding, but from what I'm hearing you speak yesterday and today,
Yeah.
is that we should be using more of our left brain because that's where we're smarter. Didn't you say that yesterday?
No, I said the reverse. I said that the right brain is where you have your relationships.
Oh, I
The
knew
left
that.
brain does more analytical thinking.
Right, and I thought you said we should be using more of the right brain or the left brain because that's, I guess that's the way I picked it up yesterday.
That's what I thought too.
No,
Yeah.
that's why it was all marked out. No,
Yeah.
no, because it was
No,
what we
yeah.
needed.
In other words, you said that's, maybe
The
I'm
left
wrong,
was
but I
marked
thought
out.
you said that the left brain was, that's where we're more
No.
smarter.
No, he was saying the right brain is where it's all.
Well, I know that's the logic side.
relationship. Left brain is logic, right brain is relationship side. It's more intuition. If you heal the right brain, you get smarter, your functional intelligence increases. Society's becoming more left brained.
Yeah, well, I picked up that, but for some reason I thought you had said that we should be using more of our left brain because that's, I thought you said that's, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought you said that's where our intelligence is, and we should be using more of that sometimes. That's
Oh, yeah.
what I
And
picked up.
he's talking opposite today then.
Yeah, so that's why I'm confused.
Okay, well, maybe I wasn't clear, but I was saying, yeah, you need to use more of the right brain because without the right brain, the left brain becomes much less intelligent.
Okay,
And so if you focus on relationships, you get smarter and your left brain turns on more. But if you focus on the left brain, your right brain turns off and then
yeah,
you
I picked
actually
up
go
that,
insane.
but I, for some reason, thought you had meant that we should use more of the left because that's where I thought you said that's where more of our genius lies, is in that side. That's
Oh,
what-
okay.
That's what I picked up yesterday.
Yeah, I was scratching this out yesterday
Yeah.
because I was showing this is always wrong, so you should not use it to come to answers. You should make things
Okay.
right brain dominant.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay, it's just I misunderstood, I wanted to clarify, because I thought I'm getting confused.
Yeah, I have to watch my video and see where did I give that impression, because I thought I was clear, but I'm glad you brought that up so
Okay.
that we know. So, yeah, logic is mostly in the right brain, a little bit in the left brain, but this part of the brain, if it takes over the left, which can happen if you don't have good relationships, like when I was in Hawaii, I had this thought, God's will is I must always be vegan, so if I'm eating cheese, I lose the Holy Spirit. That's a left brain way of thinking. But I found myself going back to running my own life so that I could be holy, getting up at 5 a.m., having morning devotions, and I soon lost my desire and capacity for relationships. I couldn't hear God's voice. I had voices in my head because we're meant to live by intuition, not by logic. And I was living by logic voluntarily, and the result was that I ended up losing my spiritual life, even though I was doing all the right things. Reading the Bible for an hour a day. You know, I had the Word, but I didn't have the God of the Word. I was literally pulling my hair out, you know, because I needed connection. But when you're in this part of the brain, in a dominant way, everything becomes very boxy, and your ability to connect actually goes away.
So,
Yeah.
have you studied if the right brain is bigger than the left, or are they equal?
Well, I would say as far as how much is functioning, each percent of the time, we naturally function 80% in the right, 20% in the left. Now I think they may be equal in the things they do, but this part of the brain is less intelligent. It's like designed to go for a specific thing, grab it, and use it. This is designed to see the big picture. Like you think of an animal. The animal is looking around to see if there are any threats. It sees the big picture, sees everything at once. That's the right brain. The left brain is, I'm focusing on getting my prey, making sure I get this one thing, you know. Like I'm going to the fridge to get this piece of food. Someone talks to me, maybe I ignore them. But if I'm in the right brain, I'm walking towards the food, but I talk to them at the same time, and everything flows together. Nothing really interferes with each other. And so if you simply feed the right brain, like having enough sleep, taking time with people you enjoy being with, listening to classical music. I listen to a couple hours of classical music a day. It feels like it's wiring my brain. It's just very good for the brain, you know. You got different music styles for different things, you know. Like, if you want, you know, high joy, rap music can bring you to high joy. It's like dessert. But if I listen to it for 6 hours, my brain feels like it's being overwhelmed, you know. So it's interesting how these different.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't listen to a lot of music, but I listen to Christian talk radio.
Yeah, yeah.
How would that affect me?
Well, if it's more logical,
It's more logical, yeah.
then it could make you more left brain dominant.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. Like, if I listened to it exactly, I could tell because, you know, some logic is more left brain, some is more right brain. But like, if I listened to like that show, I could tell within a few seconds, like, oh, this will put your brain into this state, you know.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if they're more
So
related.
we should listen to more music. I just, when I'm at home, I like listening, when I'm in the kitchen working, I like listening to Christian radio.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's music, but a lot of times it's programs,
Okay.
you know, and maybe pastors talking,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
So
like,
if we
what's
use-
the?
If we use our left brain more often than the right, we become actually dumber.
Yes, yes. In fact, if you're using only your left brain, they call that schizophrenia.
Ooh,
So the left brain just sees many details but doesn't see how they relate to each other. You know, in schizophrenia, I might think that your two eyes were two different people, you know, because the intuition, oh, this face belongs to one person, starts to go away. Or like, I might think, oh no, my wife is this cord, or this is a snake that's sleeping, you know. We take all our right brain perceptions for granted, but in schizophrenia they stop working, you know. How do people get schizophrenic? Early childhood, lack of connection, and trauma. As I said yesterday, there's a book called All My Children. These two social workers who were adopting people who were very schizophrenic, reparenting them, and these people were able to experience healing. They often had multiple personalities, but once the trust was built and they began to trust this relationship, their intuition came back and they weren't schizophrenic anymore. So if God's system of family can heal people who are schizophrenic, it can heal the rest of us who are less damaged, you know. Usually it's about a certain situation. I lose my patience, or I get overly upset when I can't find something, or when I enter a certain emotion, you know, I tend to be out of control. These are the more minor issues that the average person deals with, you know. So if you can handle all your emotions and get back to joy quickly, and if you're not taken out of peace by someone yelling at you, then you're like, you know, at the high end of emotional brain function, you know, because you realize at the emotional level, you can say it intellectually, but you realize at the emotional level, God is my Father, He approves of me. So if this person is yelling at me, I only feel sorry for them and I don't feel threatened anymore. You know, that's kind of rare. Most people, if they're yelled at, they start to get very unsettled, and they usually yell back. But if how a person treats you no longer unsettles you, then you've become very secure in Christ, you know, very emotionally mature. So that's the goal that anybody can get to if they want to. You know, it's like, okay, I'll put those missing pieces into your brain. So now I'm going to get into how this affects freedom in the area of religion. And what I'm most familiar with is the pluses and minuses of my own Adventist church denomination. So let's take a couple of things and see how it affects the two parts of the brain. The left brain wants security and things to be the same each week. So we have the same order of service. I'll just write the letters to save time. Song, meal, prayer, announcements, children's story, sermon. Song, meal, prayer, announcements, children's story, sermon. And then somebody says, well, let's switch these two. So we're going to have song, prayer, then meal, then announcements, children's story, and sermon. And some people would feel insecure because their security is in things happening in the same predictable way each time, or the person becomes upset. It's the same psychology as an autistic person who wants at 8:15 a.m. his peas with soy milk and yogurt, and if there's no yogurt, he gets upset because something has changed. I used to be more like this. My security, my sense of stability was predictable things happening at the same time. That because my home had some issues, things were never at the same time. So I had to talk with my parents, and I realized, okay, my security is in being right, my security is in things happening the same way at the same time, but it should be in relationships. Then if I eat at 8 a.m. or 2 p.m., it doesn't matter because I know my father loves me, my mother loves me, and if what happens in the day gets shifted around, I still feel secure. So when that happens in a church, then you no longer have this issue. Now, the church sees the big picture, which is God and joy and us. And whatever we do in our service, song or prayer, or all prayer, no song, to fulfill these three, we're good. Because we are in God's house, we have joy because we're with God, and we have joy with each other because all of us are here. And then our security is in the relationship with other people horizontally and God vertically, instead of in doing things in a certain order. Yeah. And this is the reason a lot of people in the church feel inflexible. They don't have this relational link to God. They don't actually feel close to God, so they're trying to do this technique and this technique to get close to God. But the Bible says, though you make your bed in hell, I am there. Though you dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, I am there. So if God's already there, why are you trying to get to him? So this explains, so many problems in churches. They don't have peace, that if you think differently than me, you have God too. If you can't agree on this topic, you have God too, because if you have that fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, and gentleness, we know Romans 7:18, Paul is saying, in me, that is in my flesh, dwells no good thing. So there's no goodness in human nature. So if you meet somebody who has some goodness in them, everybody I've met across 20 countries, many different religions and atheists, all have some goodness in them. That's all from God. Mm-hmm. So I literally realize I'm meeting Jesus every person that I meet. Yeah. No exceptions, because I see the light in them, and I know that they are being sought by God. He's working with them. They have some joy, and they realize to some degree that it's us, all of us in humanity. And then this gives us freedom to be able to love people and not say, oh, I can't love you because you're in the wrong group. I got to stay away from you because you're going to contaminate me, you know. I've contaminated myself enough already. It doesn't matter, you know. So this right brain view will give people, you know, a lot more joy in their life and freedom. Like, what's the point, you know? So literally, when I live my day, I think, okay, had enough time talking to people, enough time relaxing, you know. I'm feeding the right brain, and then I think of simple solutions. I was looking for the adapter for my computer to talk to my phone yesterday, and I thought, oh, I can just buy the adapter at a store. So I'd look at where the store is. Okay, there's the store, closed 40 minutes ago. I gotta go to the store this morning. So I go to the store, and it took a few minutes to find, but I found the store and I was able to buy the adapter. The lady thought she didn't have it. And I said, I just need the adapter micro USB to USB-C. She says, I'm sorry, we don't have that. But then we talked a bit about the weather and where I was from. And she said, well, I have this. And I said, that's just what I need. But if I hadn't kept talking, I would walk out of the store without it. And she said, let me see over here. We got this. Yeah, that's what I need. I'll buy that. For half the price that she was going to sell me the other thing that she didn't have. So sometimes you can't take the first no for an answer. If I hadn't persisted with the Spirit's impression saying, just talk about, you know, her life, you know, and her health situation, this all came up in a few seconds, I wouldn't have the space on my computer to record this now. So always listen to the Spirit, you know. So this makes life much easier. And we have gone about 40 minutes. We can take a break and let this settle, because then I'm going to talk about how this relates to society in my next talk. Because if you thought that this was mind-blowing at the personal level, wait till you see how it applies to society. So I'm just going to leave this like this, and I'm going to leave this saying, big picture to
The only thing that's really missing for people is the knowledge, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
If they know,
yeah.
then they would not.
Yeah. If they knew about this, many would say, oh, now that I know which way works, I'm going to change how I live, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we were talking last night because I was trying to communicate with you about that AI related stuff.
Yeah.
During your talk just now, I felt like asking, because I was kind of thinking about it, and I wanted to see like what would the computer actually say if you asked it. Is it more of a right brain or a left brain, the LLMs?
Yeah.
And they say it resembles more of a right brain style processing compared to a traditional program, because the traditional program would be logical, sequential, rule based on algorithms, deterministic. But then the LLMs are like pattern recognition, fuzzy, associative.
That's the new computers, organic computers, something like that.
Well, they work. The point is that it works like a right brain.
Like
Yeah,
a
I
right
see what
brain,
you mean.
Intuition. Like
Now here's what I think.
Yeah.
At the large level, it appears to be right brain, but at the level of actual processing, it's left brain. So there's certain situations where you would discover that it isn't able to be right brain in that particular situation.
But can I try to answer that with my right brain instead of my left brain?
Yeah.
So, because earlier I wanted to say, you're worried. You said Enoch is saying he's worried about computers, but then I've been saying, well, sometimes I felt like computers have treated me better than people have.
Yes, yes.
That's
Yeah,
sad.
yeah, this is
That's
true,
very
because
sad.
computers
Very
are
sad.
more predictable, you see.
And it's not necessarily just because there's something wrong with the right brain even.
Yeah.
It could be because
Just said it.
they're they make a mistake and then they think
Yeah.
because they're confused about a situation, they just misinterpret a situation.
Yeah.
And it becomes harmful and becomes.
But you know what? You might be treated better with a machine, provide a machine, but is it really real?
That's right, like he
It's
said, you're
not
talking to a
real.
machine rather than a person.
And this is what
I'd
that's,
rather have the real thing,
Yeah.
You
even
need
if
to.
I was not treated, because I might have learned something if I was really rotten, or I'm missing something. At least it's real. I can be
Yes.
rejected, I can be whatever, abused or what, rather than a machine that doesn't, it doesn't have anything.
because I think ultimately what really matters is the way God designed is whether we're connected to God or not. Because if somebody's spiritually dead, they can have a functioning, what looks like a functioning, but the way God connects the rest it might be right through right brain to left brain. Like he has the way of things work, but ultimately the difference, I think, is gonna be whether somebody's connected to God or not. Even more so.
Yeah, that's a piece. And there's also the piece that because you see some goodness in each person, everybody already has a link to God. They may not be aware of it. You know, I've never met a person where there wasn't some kind of a link to God. If they didn't have a link to God, according to their early church, they'd be dead. And according to Romans 7:18, that says there's no goodness in human nature, they'd be completely evil, fully psychopathic, you know. I've never met such a person. But yeah, people can disappoint you, but it's like God creating the world. He could have made robots that always serve him, no pain. He makes people with free choice, there's pain, but the reward is greater because these are people who are conscious, who can actually love. The robot cannot love, it can only make you think that it loves you. So it's kind of bearing with the real that may be painful versus experiencing the fake that always works, but it's fake, so there's a fundamental problem after a while, you know. It's kind of how I see it, you know. But with healthy relationships with real people, it helps you perceive everything else correctly. That's my security, you know. Just make sure that I have a real connection to God and to people, and then if I use computers, I'll have a sixth sense of, you know, where the line might be for me, you know. Maybe
So
different
what do
for
you
someone
think's
else.
The biggest problem that people have, is it that they have a weak connection to God, or is it that they're not aware enough of their connection to God? Or is it just always different?
I think they're not aware enough because everybody has a strong connection to God in the sense that God's aware of everybody, but they're not always aware of Him. And so the way they become aware of Him is by healed relationships. So the devil sought to break up families so that though you have a connection to God, your antenna has stopped working so you can't feel it. You know, with emotional healing, I'm at a point where I feel God's love continuously 24/7. It was not like that before. Did God's love for me change? No. Did my awareness of His love for me change? Very much yes. So, through human connections, we'll get a greater ability to be able to experience God, understand God, and also to love people in the moment, you know.
Yeah, it's the experience.
Yeah.
So, but the only way that it could really work is that if we have this connection 24/7, because whatever happens here,
Yes.
it could fall apart anytime, right? You are not
Yeah.
supposed to be dependent on this. I mean, at some times, we love to have this connection, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because we want the touch, the
Yeah,
real
yeah.
thing.
Uh-huh.
But this is not trustworthy.
Yeah.
Only Him is trustworthy. This one is not. It's very
Yeah, yeah.
emotional,
Mm-hmm.
which is not bad because we learn from it. We
Yeah.
continue learning from this relationship. We continue to cling to God
Yes, yes.
more and more and more.
Yeah.
So this is it. We need to see vertical relationship 24/7, non-stop.
Yeah, yeah.
And also because if we are fed with this relationship, we can give. We can always give.
Yes,
No matter
yes.
how we're treated, we can give.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because the way of God is giving, and
Yes.
the way of Satan is always taking and
Yes.
taking and taking.
Wow. That's a big point I want to add to, because there's three kinds of relationships. Two of them are dysfunctional. One of them is I take from other people because I need to receive. That's dysfunctional. There is the kind where I am giving in order to receive. That's also dysfunctional. Like if I do this for you, now I expect this back from you. That's manipulation. The correct way is I receive from God and I give to people. Or if I'm a child, I receive from my parents and I give to people.
Without asking in return.
Yeah, I receive in order to give. That's the correct way to think. I'm receiving because I need to receive first, and then I give out. I receive from my parents through a healed relationship with them, and then I can hear from God better. I receive from Him, then I give to others because I care about people. But because I know I'm mortal, I'm not going to be giving without receiving all the time. I need, to eat, to feed my body. I need to sleep. I need to enjoy being with people and just chill and do different things. This time in the Bible, this time with computers, this time with my linguistics project, this time talking to my father, all kinds of different things. I used to think when I was younger that if I had enough faith, I could be like God in the sense of not needing anything. And that I could just give and never receive, and that didn't work. If I just have enough faith, I won't need love. I can just keep giving out love, and that didn't work. It's like, if I need to receive from people, and people are dysfunctional, what if they hurt me? So I had that block in my life for years. How can I trust people when people obviously have issues? So God assured me, I will love you through people. You can trust me, therefore you can trust me to work through people. And that's how I was able to begin my journey of making friends again, after being hurt before. It was like God protect me so that if I trust over here, I won't get burned. When I trusted, then I wasn't burned, because He knows how to talk to somebody, when to talk to them. So even if they have issues, I don't touch their issues. We're having fun over here, and then everything is okay, God knows how to work that out. The angels will work with what we say, how we say it, our facial expressions, everything. Because that was a big issue for me.
Yeah, and one more thing, this is what I learned through this,
Yeah.
meetings about how God works in us.
Yes, yes.
Our problem is we don't know how to receive.
Yes,
We
yes.
don't know how to receive. So
right.
Yeah.
if we didn't receive it, we cannot give it.
That's right.
So
Yeah, yeah.
we need to receive all
Yeah.
the time.
Uh-huh.
We need to receive,
Yeah.
and we need to think that whatever we receive is not ours, it's from Him.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then we can also give it away.
Yeah, yeah.
So we need to be ready to receive what God's blessing to us every day,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then we're ready also to give it away.
Right
And
on.
it just continues like that every single day.
Yes. Yeah, because when you're able to receive, it's like if you know how it feels when someone cares for you when you've been physically injured, then you can care for someone else that's been physically injured. That's how it works with parents. They give you this piece, then you give out this piece. But if you've not received a certain thing in childhood, you can't give that out. You can find it in the Bible in a story that helps your brain receive it from God directly, and then you give it to others. But it does work both ways, both directly from God and also from people. When I found rest, I could give rest to others. I can calm myself, very calm. So when I meet somebody who's scary, their energy state starts to match mine and they cease to become scary. Because I can keep myself in that calm state. But that had to be learned in my right brain over the course of years, And to realize, how can I have success in this area when I have failed over here? Well, I know that God forgives me. It's like, give me an experience to teach me how to do this. And then after this, it works, Then you can have success. So that's basically how that works. That you can handle, these different negative emotions. If you are comforted in shame, you can help someone else in shame. You're comforted in hopeless despair, you can help someone else in that. Comforted in fear, help someone else in fear. And then you can be that ministry to others. Like the Bible says, comfort others with the comfort that you've received. So That's basically how that works. So, I think this is a nice wrap for now before I go into part 2. So thank you all very much.
Let's just take like a 20-minute break.